Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to talk to you about a book that I read for the Voice Challenge for Nonfiction November 2019, and then I would like to compare it against a movie that was just recently released. This month I read The Good Neighbor, The Life and Work of Fred Rogers by Maxwell King, which is a biography of the beloved children's television show host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. The book begins with a history of his upbringing in a Pennsylvania town outside of Pittsburgh called Latrobe. His family had quite a bit of money, and they were rather protective of him, but I don't think you could go so far as to say they sheltered him. His parents were extremely kind and were very involved in the community of the area. They also really supported his individuality and his creativity. Fred's father did very much want him to go into the family business, but his father never used that as a reason to stifle Fred's creativity. Fred was much more interested in creating puppet characters and learning how to compose music. He eventually went on to study music in college. Very early on, he recognized the power of television and the way that it had and still has the ability to shape the ideas of viewers. And so once his studies concluded, he surprised everyone in his life when he, a soft-spoken man, announced that he was deciding to pursue a career in television. He started his career working on different shows, including a children's television show, until eventually Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood came on the air in 1968, and with the exception of a few years at the end of the 1970s, it stayed on the air until 2001 and has over 900 episodes. If you've ever seen the show, you'll know that Fred Rogers was a strong advocate for the emotional well-being of children, and through the show he attempted to deliver messages of kindness, love, patience through the music, the puppets, the cast of the show, all with him at the center as host. A large amount of this book is dedicated to talking about the process of making Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which makes sense because it was such a huge part of his life and is the major reason why he is the cultural icon that he is today. But far from giving you a bunch of behind-the-scenes drama that will change your perception of Fred Rogers and potentially ruin your childhood, this book proves that in person, he was every bit the man he was on television. And that's the other major part of this book, the study of Fred Rogers as a person, because although it seems at times he was worthy of sainthood, he was just a person like the rest of us with his own shortcomings. But I think the dominant message in this book is that Fred Rogers was an intensely disciplined individual, and he genuinely cared for others. This book is beyond fantastic. It is really, really difficult to look at Fred Rogers in any kind of an objective human way because in so many different ways he seems like he was just too good for this world. But in this book, King manages to humanize him and somehow makes him even easier to cherish. When you see through this book how much of Fred Rogers' life was based on dedicated and continuous choices to be good and do good out there in the world, you will love him all the more. And as you may have heard, years after his death, people still love this soft-spoken man so much that they've made an entire feature film all about him starring Tom Hanks called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I should mention right away that the movie is not based off of this specific book, although it definitely seems like they consulted it for research for the script. This movie is actually based off of a 1998 Esquire article. The main character of the movie is a journalist who is assigned to do a short profile of Fred Rogers for an upcoming issue on National Heroes. And so, to do research, he speaks with Fred Rogers. He meets up with him several times. While he's writing this article, this journalist is having a bit of a family crisis based off of some long-term drama, long-term resentment. Very relatable. The journalist is initially very skeptical of Mr. Rogers' authenticity and is more than a little condescending about his methods. But, as you can probably guess, those feelings start to change as the movie goes on. The show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, is being filmed at many different points in the movie, so just like you do in the book, you get to go on set, which was absolutely wonderful. And also in the movie, you get to meet Mr. Rogers' wife, Joanne, and in the book, you get to know her quite well, which was an interesting experience for me because it just so happened that the real Mrs. Rogers was in the theater next door to us as we watched this movie. I went to see it with my husband, and very early on we learned that she had rented out the entire theater next to us for a viewing party with her friends. I don't know why it surprised me so much considering we went to go see this movie on opening night in Mr. Rogers' old neighborhood. That's something I wanted to mention, not just because it was a really cool thing that happened to me, but also to demonstrate how much this story is of Pittsburgh. Mr. Rogers was from this area. He raised his children here. The show was filmed here. He is so intensely important in this community. So as lovely as it was to see the miniature of our skyline, to see the WQED studio where this was filmed, and to see that one scene they shot downtown, the movie didn't feel like Pittsburgh because so much of it takes place in New York. But the book felt like Pittsburgh. And it's not even really something that I can put entirely into words, but the community and the spirit of the place was there. And because the story of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is a story of Pittsburgh, the two are inextricably linked, it's something I wanted to see more of in the movie. Other than that, I really have no complaints about the movie. I absolutely loved it. After we got done watching it, I went and read some reviews of it, and I stumbled into one article that was comparing the 1998 Esquire article and the real story behind how it was written to this movie. And of course, it's not a one-to-one matchup. There is some variation because they had to move things around to structure a narrative. But if you've read the biography before you go to see the movie, as I did, then you'll know that so many of the things in the movie actually happened. So many of the quotes were actually his. They just happened in a slightly different context. But in the movie, they were never so far removed from their context that this stopped feeling like a movie about Fred Rogers. And Tom Hanks did so much to make this feel like an authentic Fred Rogers movie. The way he talks, the pregnant pauses, the big authentic smiles, he captured his entire aura. But just the way the movie was done too, the stylistic choices are so effective because what was and still is so special about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is just how quiet it is. Entertainment is so frequently this loud, colorful, explosive, in-your-face kind of thing, appealing to all of those sections of our brains that crave that stimulation and drama, when I think people in the entertainment industry don't realize that we need a respite. We need a break from the noise and the constant messages of impending doom. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood gave children doses of that in his show, and this movie delivers much of the same thing to adults. The movie is not visually busy. It's not overly dramatic. The music is kept to a minimum. It's kept simple. It's mostly the music that Fred Rogers composed. The movie definitely delivers the emotion, but not in a manipulative kind of way, not in the I'm trying to make you cry kind of way that I just cannot abide. It's just heartfelt. The movie delivers the kind of pain of two halves being stitched together to be made whole again. It stings, but it's all in the name of healing. If you love Mr. Rogers like I do, then I really want you to read this biography and see this movie. I personally found it really rewarding to have read the biography first before seeing the movie, because it just honestly made my heart so full to know so much of the movie was authentically Fred. The book delivers that Pittsburgh essence that I wanted so much from the movie, especially since portions were filmed here. But since I had already gotten to experience that so much in the book, I wasn't as disappointed. The book would also make for excellent preparation if you're planning on making a visit to our wonderful city of Pittsburgh and maybe doing some Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood related tourism. It would also make a great companion for you while you do that. And the movie, well, the movie, like a hologram, will make you feel both wonderful and so profoundly sad, as it gives you the illusion that we could have Fred Rogers back for a whole 100 minutes. I really wish we could have him back. Please let me know if you've read this book, if you've seen this movie, or if you intend to do either or both. You can put that or any other comments or questions you may have down in the comment section below, but you can also find me on a variety of different other places on social media, and the links to all of those profiles will be in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, neighbor. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my neighbor?